Hi, Andrew here, and I think there's a shitstorm brewing. If we look around the world at the state of things today, uh, we see some disturbing trends. And they line up very interestingly with a book I read a few years ago called Generations by Strauss and Howe. The Strauss and Howe are historians, and their basic premise is that every 4 generations, there's a shitstorm. There's a perfect storm of crap comes flying around. And as it happens, the last one was in the 30s with the Great Depression as we came into World War II. And a generation runs around 22 years, according to them. So 88 years later, from 1932, it's 2 years ago, which puts us right square in the storm that they talk about. Economic crisis, military crisis, political crisis, all of these things tend to come together in a roughly 90-ish year cycle. If you subtract back from the last one, you end up in the Long Depression followed by the American Civil War. And if you subtract back from that one, there was a major recession and the American Revolution. It's a very interesting book. I believe one of the authors has passed, but the other is still writing on the topic. Fascinating. But I'm not here to do a book review of Generations. If you want to read it, read it. It's a good book. As I said, I read it several years ago. I should probably reread it and see how their predictions are holding up. And I should probably dig a little bit further into the writings of the fellow who's still out there. But if we take it as read that they're generally correct, and even if we don't and we just simply look around, we've got a land war in Eastern Europe. We have major political turmoil in much of the Western world. We have bifurcated societies. I have talked about Scott Adams' idea of 2 movies on one screen where people on the left see one thing and people on the right see another. I know they're switched because the camera turns it around, but anyway, we see the same events, but we draw completely opposite conclusions as to what those events represent. I saw something very interesting the last couple of days that I'll have to delve in deeper. But according to one writer, Canada is in the midst of a crisis of democracy. And according to a writer on the other side of the spectrum, we stand to gain so much from Blackface Hitler and Jagmeet Sock Puppet's power sharing agreement. Exact same events. One side, we're in a crisis of democracy. The other side, oh, this is so awesome. Well, forgetting that stuff, let's just look at the events of the day. Our Western countries are collapsing, our economies are collapsing under their debts. We have incentivized the population to not go to work. We are sanctioning 2 countries that provide something like 40 or 50% of the world's phosphate fertilizer. You know what you need fertilizer for? Growing food. We've had crops collapsing. The winter wheat crop, a friend of mine lives in farm country and he keeps me up to date. The winter wheat crop in the US is not up to snuff. Last year, the corn crop froze in the fields in Brazil. Brazil? They're on the equator. Yeah, the corn crop froze. As I understand it, you need phosphates for those grain crops. And whether it's phosphates or not, you need fertilizer, you need ammonia fertilizers. What's the basis of ammonia? The ammonia industry is based in natural gas. What are we doing? We're sanctioning one of the world's largest suppliers. We're killing our own supply. Most of the peasant rebellions that led to the end of a dynasty in Chinese history started with famine. And I read a news article a few days ago that if the Ukraine doesn't get its wheat crop in, soon, there's going to be a famine next year in Africa. economic collapse, food supply collapse. What's going to happen when a continent of what, 2 billion people can't feed itself? And we can't send them food because we have no fertilizer, because we killed the industry. One, we killed the industry that provides it. And two, the people who provide what we don't provide ourselves, we've said, we can't trade with you. We're on the verge of going to war with them. There's a shitstorm coming. And all of this is preamble. My real question is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? There's a fella I read who says you're either human capital or you're a capitalist. You work for somebody, or you generate capital and work for yourself and have your money work for you, etc., etc. All my life I've been capital. I've had good jobs. I've had a really good career. My company is growing insanely fast right now, and I'm in an industry that tends to be recession-proof. But I don't think it's a recession that's coming. And what difference does it make recession coming if there's no food? And you have 3 very hungry growing boys to feed. I hope I said that well. If you have 3 hungry mouths to feed. I know what I'm doing. And one of the things I wish to do with this channel is to pivot a little bit to it and document it a little bit. I am, as I said, I have been human capital. Class of 92. I've been human capital for 30 years. I've generated other people money, stuff, you name it. And I need to move out of that. There are several ways to do it. A fascinating take on it is found in Richard Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I highly recommend reading that. He's a real estate investor. I'm not going that route, but one of the things that you can do is generate intellectual property. I have joked about my burgeoning media empire from this and my blog and stuff. And that's the direction that I'm going. I'm trying to become a freelance writer because it's something that I can do in my spare time. Because while I don't wish to be somebody else's capital, while I wish to generate my own, I make a good living and I can't just quit. I can't tell my boss 2 weeks notice. I need time. I need to build it up. But what are you doing? Buddy of mine, everybody jokes about the side hustle. Have you got one? Get one. There's an American talk show guy who is all about that. Get your debts paid off and get a side hustle going. Well, what should I do? Dave, I think. This is Dave Ramsey. What should I do, Dave? You're already doing it. What? He says, you're already doing it. Your side hustle, you're already doing it. It's something you enjoy doing. So, throw yourself into it. I love creating content. I love making these videos. I love writing. So that's the direction I want to go. And the first challenge is to do these things and get good at them. What's the next challenge? Well, the next challenge is a topic for another day. But the topic for today is, there's a shitstorm brewing. What are you going to do about it?